The Cleveland Browns quarterback situation has officially exploded into an organizational meltdown of epic proportions, and at the absolute center of it all stands owner Jimmy Haslam, a billionaire whose fingerprints are all over every single quarterback decision this franchise has made for over a decade. Shadur Sanders, the polarizing fifth-round rookie out of Colorado, is fighting for his professional life as the 2026 offseason rapidly approaches. And the chaos surrounding his future isn't just about his performance on the field. This goes so much deeper. It's about ownership obsession that borders on dysfunction. It's about front office uncertainty that has plagued this team for years. It's about coaching staff instability that makes every season feel like a reset. And it's about a franchise that absolutely cannot seem to escape its own quarterback curse, no matter how hard it tries, no matter how much money it spends, no matter how many draft picks it burns. If you're not subscribed yet, you need to hit that button right now, because this story has more layers than anyone realizes, and the next few weeks, possibly even the next few days, will determine not just Shedeur Sanders' future in Cleveland, but potentially the entire direction of the Browns franchise for the next 5 to 10 years. This is that big, this is that important, and this is that messy. Here's where things start getting really complicated, and trust me, it gets deeper the more you dig into it. Jimmy Haslam isn't just any NFL owner sitting in a luxury box counting his money and letting football people make football decisions. He's arguably the most hands-on, quarterback-obsessed, involved in every decision owner in the entire National Football League. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Since purchasing the Cleveland Browns back in 2012 for over $1 billion, Jimmy Haslam has presided over what can only be described as one of the most disastrous, embarrassing, franchise-destroying quarterback carousels in the history of professional football. We're not talking about 5 or 6 different starters. We're not talking about a dozen quarterbacks across a decade. We are talking about 34 different starting quarterbacks since 1999. Let that number truly sink in for a moment. 34 human beings have started a game at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. From Brandon Weeden, the 28-year-old first-round pick who was already older than most established NFL starters, to Johnny Manziel, the Heisman Trophy winner whose off-field issues destroyed his career before it started. From Deshaun Kaiser, who went 0-16 and looked completely lost every single Sunday, to Baker Mayfield, who won a playoff game and then got traded after the franchise decided Deshaun Watson was the answer. And speaking of Deshaun Watson, we'll get to that absolute disaster in just a minute, because that might be the single worst decision any NFL franchise has made in the salary cap era. The point is this: Jimmy Haslam has been the constant presence through the vast majority of that quarterback nightmare. He's been there for the first-round busts, he's been there for the veteran free agent disasters, he's been there for the trade acquisitions that failed spectacularly. And now, as Shadur Sanders prepares for what might be the most important game of his young professional career, Week 18 on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals, multiple reports from trusted Cleveland insiders indicate that Jimmy Haslam himself is not just involved, but deeply involved in the quarterback evaluation process. He's watching every practice, he's in every meeting, he's asking questions, he's pushing his opinions, and that should absolutely terrify Browns fans, because Haslam's track record of quarterback evaluation is about as bad as it gets in the National Football League. But before we dive into Shadur Sanders' performance and what Week 18 means for his future, we have to address the Arch Manning elephant in the room. And this isn't just media speculation. This isn't just talk radio hosts trying to generate clicks and views. This is a documented, verified, confirmed obsession from the owner of the Cleveland Browns. Let me give you the exact quote that started all of this. ESPN Cleveland radio host Tony Rizzo, who has covered this team for decades and has sources deep inside the organization, dropped an absolute bombshell earlier this year when he said on the air, and I'm quoting directly here, "I know he would not admit it, and I know it's nothing that they want to talk about, but I'm telling you, the thirst that Jimmy Haslam has for Arch Manning is unmatched. Unmatched. Not interested, not intrigued, not keeping an eye on. Unmatched thirst. Those are strong words. Those are deliberate words. And Rizzo wouldn't say something like that on the air unless he knew it to be true from people inside the building. And here's why this Arch Manning obsession makes so much sense when you understand Jimmy Haslam's background and his personal connections. Haslam is a University of Tennessee alumnus. He didn't just attend Tennessee, he's one of their biggest boosters. The Haslam family has donated literally millions of dollars to the University of Tennessee over the years. They have buildings named after them. They have programs funded by them. Tennessee football is in the Haslam family's blood. And who played quarterback at the University of Tennessee between 1994 and 1997 and became one of the greatest players in college football history? Peyton Manning, Arch Manning's uncle. The connection is right there. It's not hidden. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is real, documented, verifiable information. Jimmy Haslam has known the Manning family for years through his Tennessee connections. Multiple reports have confirmed that Haslam tried to bring Peyton Manning into the Browns' front office organization years ago in some kind of advisory or executive role, but it never materialized. Peyton didn't want to work for the Browns, which, if you've been paying attention to this franchise for the last 25 years, makes complete sense. Now, fast forward to 2025 and 2026. Arch Manning is at the University of Texas, not Tennessee, but he's playing at an extremely high level. He's got the Manning name, he's got the Manning bloodline, he's got the arm talent, the football IQ, the poise, the leadership, everything you want in a franchise quarterback. And Jimmy Haslam is watching. The Browns sent a VIP contingent to watch Manning play against Ohio State earlier this season. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't just routine scouting. That was ownership making a statement. And here's the kicker that makes this entire situation so dangerous for Shadur Sanders. The Cleveland Browns currently hold 2 first-round picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. They have their own pick, which is currently sitting at number 6 overall, and they have the Jacksonville Jaguars' first-round pick, which is in the late 20s. They have the draft capital, they have the ammunition, they have the flexibility to make a massive move if they want to. And multiple analysts, insiders, and people who cover this team closely believe that Jimmy Haslam is willing to do something that sounds absolutely insane, but is very much on the table. Skip the entire 2026 quarterback class, row with Shadur Sanders or some veteran game manager for one season, tank the 2026 campaign to get a top 3 pick in the 2027 draft, and then go all in on Arch Manning when he declares for the NFL draft. Think about the implications of that strategy for a moment. Think about what that means for Shadur Sanders specifically. He's not just competing for a starting job against Dillon Gabriel or potential 2026 draft picks like Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore. He's competing against a ghost. He's competing against a player who won't even be eligible for the NFL draft for another full year. He's competing against a Manning, a name that carries weight and legacy and expectations unlike any other name in football. Analyst Chris Oldach said it very plainly on Cleveland Sports Radio. I don't think they believe in Shadur, but maybe they do. And I also just think that, here's the thing, don't get mad at me, okay? I think Haslam is still waiting for Arch Manning. That's not subtle. That's not reading between the lines. That's a direct statement from someone who covers this team, saying the owner of the franchise is already looking past 2026 to chase a quarterback in 2027. And Tony Grossi, the most respected, most connected, longest tenured Cleveland analyst in the media, echoed that exact sentiment when he said on the Tony Rizzo show, "It looks like we're going to do it over again. We're going to punt on the quarterback and wait for 2027. That's not just damning for Shadur Sanders. That's a death sentence for any quarterback currently on this roster not named Arch Manning. Imagine being a 23-year-old rookie trying to establish yourself in the National Football League, trying to prove you belong, trying to show you can be a franchise quarterback, and you know, not suspect, but know that ownership might be willing to sacrifice an entire season, waste another year of this roster's prime, and tank for a shot at a different quarterback who hasn't even played his final college season yet.
That's not a meritocracy. That's not competition. That's predetermined dysfunction, and it's exactly the kind of thing that has plagued the Cleveland Browns for over 2 decades. But let's be very clear about something, because this is important context. Jimmy Haslam has publicly denied all of this. During a July media availability with reporters, Haslam was asked directly, point blank, about the Arch Manning rumors and speculation, and he pushed back. Here's what he said, and again, I'm quoting directly. "I think if you know the Manning family, I would bet, and I don't know Arch at all, I would bet he stays in college 2 years, so I don't even think that's worth discussing." Classic owner speak. Deny the speculation, downplay the connection, act like it's not even on the table, and then turn around and do exactly what everyone suspected all along. We have seen this movie before in Cleveland. We have seen Jimmy Haslam say one thing publicly.
At the time, the move was controversial, to say the least. But the Browns believed they were getting an elite top 5 quarterback in his prime. Watson had been a 3-time Pro Bowler with the Texans. He led the league in passing yards in 2020. He was 25 years old with his best football ahead of him. On paper, it looked like a swing for the fences that could finally solve Cleveland's decades-long quarterback nightmare. And then it all fell apart. Watson was suspended for 11 games in his first season. He played only 6 games in 2022 and looked rusty and out of rhythm. In 2023, he played only 6 games before suffering a season-ending shoulder injury. And then, in 2024, he tore his Achilles tendon in Week 7 against the Bengals, ending his season again. He attempted to come back later in the year, but in Week 14 against the Steelers, he re-injured the same Achilles and was shut down for good. 2 torn Achilles injuries on the same leg in the same season. That's essentially a career-ending injury for a quarterback who relies on mobility and movement in the pocket. Deshaun Watson, barring some kind of medical miracle, will never play another meaningful down of football for the Cleveland Browns. Yet he's still on the roster because cutting him would create an absolutely catastrophic salary cap situation. The Browns are stuck with him financially for at least another year, maybe 2. And Jimmy Haslam admitted at the NFL owners meeting earlier this year that the Watson trade was a complete and total failure. Here's his exact quote. "We took a big swing and miss with Deshaun. We thought we had the quarterback, we didn't, and we gave up a lot of draft picks to get him. So we've got to dig ourselves out of that hole. It was an entire organization decision, and it ends with D&I, so hold us accountable." 3 first-round picks, $230 million fully guaranteed, all for a quarterback who has played 19 games in 3 seasons, thrown 14 touchdowns against 9 interceptions, and will likely never take another snap in Cleveland. That mistake has left the franchise in quarterback purgatory again, and it's exactly why the 2026 offseason and draft have become so absolutely critical. The Browns have to get this next decision right, or they're looking at another 5 years minimum of instability, dysfunction, and failure at the most important position in sports. So that brings us to Shadur Sanders and his performance in his first 6 starts as an NFL quarterback, because ultimately that's what this should be about, right? Performance, production, results on the field. Well, the tape tells an extremely complicated story, and depending on how you want to frame it, you can make arguments in both directions. Let's start with the numbers, because numbers don't lie, even if they can be interpreted in different ways. In 6 starts during the 2025 season, Shadur Sanders has completed 52% of his passes. 52%! In a modern National Football League where the league-wide average completion percentage is 65%, Sanders is completing barely more than half of his attempts. Now, some of that is on him. Some of that is decision-making, accuracy, timing, footwork, all the things young quarterbacks struggle with. But some of that is also on the supporting cast. The Browns' offensive line has been decimated by injuries all season. The receiving corps ranks near the bottom of the league in separation, meaning Sanders is constantly throwing into tight windows with defenders draped all over his targets. The play calling has been conservative and predictable at times. There are legitimate external factors contributing to that low completion percentage. But here's the thing that makes it so concerning. At the University of Colorado, playing in the Pac-12 conference, Shedeur Sanders completed 72% of his passes. 72%! He was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in all of college football. He was surgical. He rarely missed open throws. He put the ball where it needed to be consistently. And now, in the NFL, he's down 20 percentage points.
That's not just a normal rookie adjustment. That's a cliff. That's falling off a mountain. And it's the largest decline of any rookie quarterback in the entire 2025 class. Cam Ward, who went number 1 overall to the Titans, is completing 61%. Tyler Show with the Saints is at 63%. Even Dillon Gabriel, Sanders' teammate and fellow 5th-round pick, is completing 58% in limited action. Sanders is the worst among all rookie starters, and that's a massive red flag for a player who was supposed to be NFL ready from day one because of his pedigree, his coaching, and his college production. Let's look specifically at Week 17 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because that game encapsulates everything that's both promising and problematic about Shadur Sanders. On paper, his stat line looks decent. 17 completions on 23 attempts for 186 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. That's a 73.4% completion percentage, which is great. But the context behind those numbers is absolutely brutal. Sanders came out firing in the first quarter. He looked confident. He was making throws with timing and anticipation. He dropped a perfect 42-yard laser to Cedric Tillman down the sideline. Tight window, ball placed exactly where his receiver could get it. Absolute NFL-caliber throw that showed his arm talent and potential. The Browns jumped out to an early lead, and for the first 15 minutes, it looked like Sanders might finally be putting together the complete performance everyone has been waiting for. And then he threw his first interception, a forced ball into coverage that had no chance. And after that interception, something happened. Sanders turtled. He got conservative. He started checking down immediately. He stopped pushing the ball down the field. For the entire rest of the game, 3 full quarters, Shadur Sanders threw for a measly 29 yards. 29 yards in 3 quarters of football. And of those 29 yards, only 21 came in the second half. The Browns' offense completely stalled. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't sustain drives. And Sanders looked timid, rattled, and overwhelmed after making that early mistake. That's not what franchise quarterbacks do. Franchise quarterbacks shake off interceptions and keep attacking. They don't disappear for 3 quarters. And when you're trying to secure your future as an NFL starter, that kind of disappearing act in crunch time is exactly what you cannot do. And the interception problem isn't isolated to one game. It's been a recurring theme throughout Sanders' starts. In 7 total games this season, 6 starts plus 1 relief appearance, Shadur Sanders has thrown 10 interceptions. 10. 7 of those have come since he became the full-time starter in Week 12, following another Deshaun Watson injury. That means in his 6 starts, he's thrown 7 interceptions, which is the most of any quarterback in the entire NFL over that span. No other quarterback in the NFL threw more picks from Week 12 to Week 17 than Shadur Sanders, and it's not even close. He had 3 consecutive games with multiple interceptions, 2 against the Steelers, 3 against the Bears, and 2 more against the Bills. The only game where he protected the ball was Week 26 against the Titans, and ironically, that was his best performance of the season. 393 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and a gutsy fourth-quarter comeback that had everyone thinking maybe, just maybe, this kid had turned a corner. And then, the very next week against the Steelers, he regressed right back into the same mistakes, forcing balls into coverage, bailing out of clean pockets, not going through his progressions, making decisions driven by panic rather than process. Scouts and analysts who watch Sanders' tape consistently note the same issues over and over. He struggles with pocket presence. When pressure comes, even when it's not immediate or collapsing around him, Sanders has a tendency to bail early and escape the pocket before he needs to. He doesn't trust his offensive line, which, to be fair, is understandable given how bad that unit has been this year. But at the NFL level, you have to learn to navigate pressure and make throws with bodies around you. Sanders also doesn't consistently go through his progressions. He locks on to his first read, and if it's not there, he panics. He forces balls into tight coverage instead of checking down or throwing the ball away. And his footwork, which was excellent at Colorado, has become sloppy and inconsistent in the NFL. He's happy-footing in the pocket, not setting his base, and losing accuracy on throws he should be making in his sleep. All of these things are coachable. They're fixable. They're normal rookie struggles that most young quarterbacks go through. But they're also red flags for a guy who was supposed to be NFL ready from day one because of his pedigree, his coaching, and his college production.
Yet, and this is the maddening part for Browns fans and evaluators, Shadur Sanders has also shown flashes of being a legitimate franchise quarterback. That 42-yard dime to Cedric Tillman wasn't a fluke. That was an elite NFL throw. The Titans' performance wasn't a fluke either. Nearly 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, leading a comeback in the fourth quarter. That's the kind of game that shows a quarterback has the it factor. Sanders is completing 67.5% of his throws when he's not under pressure, which proves that when he has time and rhythm, he can operate at a high level. He's shown the ability to make every throw on the field. He's shown poise in 2-minute drills. He's shown leadership in the huddle and toughness when he's taken big hits. All of that matters. All of that counts. And it's worth remembering the context he's playing in. He's behind an offensive line that's been decimated by injuries all season long. He's throwing to a receiving corps that ranks near the bottom of the league in yards of separation, meaning Sanders is constantly throwing into tight windows with defenders draped all over his guys. The play calling has been conservative and predictable at times. There are legitimate external factors contributing to that low completion percentage. But here's the thing that makes it so concerning. At the University of Colorado, playing in the Pac-12 conference, Shedeur Sanders completed 72% of his passes. 72%. He was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in all of college football. He was surgical. He rarely missed open throws. He put the ball where it needed to be consistently. And now, in the NFL, he's down 20 percentage points. That's not just a normal rookie adjustment. That's a cliff. That's falling off a mountain, and it's the largest decline of any rookie quarterback in the entire 2025 class. Cam Ward, who went number 1 overall to the Titans, is completing 61%. Tyler Show with the...
Let's talk about the actual numbers that define Sanders' season, because they paint a very specific picture of where he stands right now. According to QB Impact Score, which is a metric that evaluates quarterback play based on accuracy, decision-making, and overall contribution to winning, Shedeur Sanders is currently ranked 44th out of all NFL quarterbacks with a grade of 57.0. That's not good. That's backup-level production. The Browns' offense as a whole is ranked 32nd in the entire league, dead last, with an offensive grade of 52.8. They are the worst offense in football, and while that's not entirely Sanders' fault, he's certainly a contributing factor. The Browns are averaging 16.2 points per game with Sanders at quarterback. For context, the league average is over 22 points per game. That's a 6-point gap. That's the difference between competing for a playoff spot and picking in the top 5 of the draft. And again, some of that is on the offensive line, some is on the receivers, some is on play calling, but a franchise quarterback is supposed to elevate the players around him. Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 draft, went to a Tennessee Titans team that had one of the worst rosters in football, and he's elevated that offense significantly. Tyler Show went to the New Orleans Saints as a 7th-round pick, and he's been a legitimate surprise, making plays and winning games nobody expected. Shedeur Sanders hasn't shown that same ability to lift an entire offense, and that's a very real problem when you're trying to convince a franchise to commit to you as the long-term answer at quarterback. So here's exactly where we stand as we head into Week 18. Shedeur Sanders will start on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals, and this game is being billed by analysts, by insiders, by Sanders himself as his final audition for the 2026 starting job. Head coach Kevin Stefanski was asked earlier this week what he needs to see from Sanders in this final game, and Stefanski laid out very specific benchmarks: improvement in footwork, better ball placement, more efficient operation at the line of scrimmage, and cleaner decision-making under pressure. Those are all coachable fundamentals, but they're also the basics that every NFL quarterback should be improving on game to game. And here's what makes that answer so damning. Those are the kinds of things you expect from a developmental 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent who's still learning how to play at this level. Shedeur Sanders was a guy who many draft analysts had going in the 1st or 2nd round. He was projected by some to be a top 5 pick before questions about his interviews and perceived attitude dropped him to the 5th round.
He's not supposed to still be working on footwork and ball placement in week 18 of his rookie year. He's supposed to be showing that he's already past those growing pains and ready to take the next step. The expectations for Shedeur Sanders are simultaneously way too high and way too low, depending on which faction of the fan base or media you listen to. Some people see him as the future, a guy with elite arm talent, strong football IQ, the pedigree of being Coach Prime's son, and the toughness to play behind a bad offensive line without complaining. They point to the Titans game, the Tillman throw, the moments of brilliance, and say that's the real Shedeur Sanders, and if you give him weapons and time, he'll be great. Other people see him as a bust waiting to happen, a fifth-round pick who's completing 52% of his passes, throwing double-digit interceptions, and disappearing in the biggest moments. They point to the Week 17 collapse, the 3-game stretch with multiple picks, and the overall lack of consistency, and say that's not fixable, that's who he is. The truth, as it usually does, probably lives somewhere in the middle. Sanders is talented enough to be an NFL starter. He's also flawed enough that he needs significant development and improvement before he's ready to be a franchise guy. The question is whether the Cleveland Browns have the patience, the infrastructure, and the organizational stability to develop him properly. And based on the last 25 years, the answer to that question is probably no. If Shedeur Sanders plays well against the Cincinnati Bengals, let's say he completes 65% or more of his passes, throws for 250-plus yards, tosses 2 or 3 touchdowns, doesn't turn the ball over, and leads the Browns to a victory on the road against a division rival, he will have a legitimate case to be the Week 1 starter in 2026. He'll have shown growth, he'll have shown he can bounce back from the Week 17 disaster, he'll have proven that the Titans' performance wasn't a fluke, but a sign of what he can do with confidence and rhythm. In that scenario, the Browns could realistically enter the offseason with a plan to build around Sanders, use their 2 first-round picks on offensive line and weapons, and give him a full year to develop with better support. That's the best-case scenario for Shedeur Sanders. But if he struggles, if he completes under 55%, throws multiple interceptions, looks overwhelmed by Cincinnati's pass rush, and plays scared or tentative like he did in the second half against Pittsburgh, then the Browns will almost certainly draft a quarterback in April. They have the 6th overall pick. They have a second first-round pick in the 20s. They have the draft capital to either take the best available quarterback at 6 or potentially trade up if Fernando Mendoza from Indiana or Dante from Oregon is still on the board. In that scenario, Shedeur would be competing for his job in training camp, and there's a very real chance he ends up as a backup or gets cut entirely before the 2026 season even starts. That's the worst-case scenario. And then there's the most likely scenario. Sanders plays somewhere in the middle. He has a decent game, not great, not terrible. Maybe he completes 60%, throws for 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and the Browns lose a close game to a Bengals team that's fighting for a playoff spot. In that scenario, we're looking at another quarterback competition in training camp. The Browns would bring in competition, whether through the draft, free agency, or a veteran trade, and Sanders would have to earn the job all over again in August. More uncertainty, more dysfunction, more chaos. And that's the most Cleveland Browns outcome imaginable. The Arch Manning shadow looms larger than ever as we approach this offseason. Browns fans are already being told by insiders to start thinking of tank slogans for the 2027 season. The March for Arch, Planning for Manning, Tank Commander for the Commander. These aren't jokes. These are real suggestions being floated by people who cover the team because the Arch Manning speculation is that strong. And it's not based on nothing. It's based on Jimmy Haslam's documented personal relationships with the Manning family. It's based on his Tennessee connections and his decades-long admiration for the Manning quarterback dynasty. It's based on Tony Rizzo saying on the air that Haslam's thirst for Manning is unmatched. It's based on the fact that the Browns could realistically decide that Fernando Mendoza and Dante aren't worth trading up for, that Shadur Sanders isn't the long-term answer, and the best move is to punt on 2026 entirely, roll with a veteran game manager, or just let Sanders start for a lost season, tank the year, position themselves for a top 3 pick in 2027, and then make an all-out push to draft Arch Manning. If Manning has a Heisman Trophy caliber season at Texas in 2025, and all indications are that he will, the narrative will only intensify. Every single loss the Browns take in 2026 will be met with "they're tanking for Arch." Every time Sanders makes a mistake, fans will scream, "Just tank and get Manning." It will consume the franchise. It will dominate every conversation. And it will make it nearly impossible for any quarterback on the roster to succeed, because the shadow of Arch Manning will be hanging over everything. And that sounds insane. That sounds like something that couldn't possibly happen. But this is Cleveland. This is the franchise that has started 34 different quarterbacks since 1999. This is the franchise that gave Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed after 22 civil lawsuits. This is the franchise that drafted Johnny Manziel in the first round, knowing he had substance abuse issues. Insanity has been the norm in Cleveland for over 2 decades, and there's no reason to think that's about to change now. For Shadur Sanders, this final game isn't just about proving he can play quarterback in the NFL. Everyone knows he has the arm talent. Everyone knows he has the pedigree. Everyone knows he has moments of brilliance. What Sanders has to prove on Sunday is that he's worth more than an ownership obsession with a player who won't even be draft eligible for another year. He has to prove he's better than whatever the Browns can draft with the 6th overall pick in 2026. He has to prove he can overcome organizational chaos, coaching uncertainty, roster instability, and the suffocating weight of a franchise that hasn't had a legitimate franchise quarterback since Bernie Kosar in the NFL in the 1980s. That's a lot of pressure. That's an unfair amount of pressure for a 5th-round rookie who has started exactly 6 NFL games. But that's the reality of playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Fair or not, justified or not, Shadur Sanders' entire future in Cleveland could be decided by what happens on Sunday afternoon in Cincinnati. This isn't just the final game of the 2025 season. This is a referendum on Shadur Sanders' future. This is a test of whether Jimmy Haslam's decade-long quarterback obsession will finally produce sustainable results, or if it will continue to be a cycle of disappointment and dysfunction. One game, one opportunity, one final chance to prove he belongs. The entire National Football League is watching. Scouts are watching. General managers are watching. Coaches are watching. Fans are watching. And for Shadur Sanders, the clock is ticking. Sunday will determine.
The information presented in this video is based on publicly available reports, insider statements, analyst opinions, and ongoing developments as of early January 2026. NFL draft decisions, coaching changes, and roster moves are subject to change. Player statistics reflect the 2025 season through Week 17. Speculation regarding Arch Manning, Fernando Mendoza, Dante and future draft plans is based on current projections and may evolve. This content is for entertainment and informational purposes and does not represent official statements from the Cleveland Browns, Jimmy Haslam, Shedeur Sanders, or any NFL organization.